Wow, did we have some big blockbuster games this week that really exposed and told the truth about where teams really are? And that's what was fun about this week. We got to find some stuff out. And boy, it created some chaos in the top 9 teams in the Big Ten. And here in this video, this is part 2 of my Week 4 Big Ten rankings, as I rank teams 9 through 1. All right, to kick off our part 2, at number 9, I have the Illinois Fighting Illini. And from about 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, they were at number 4 to start off the season for me. But now that ass whooping that they took to Indiana, there's no way they're not going to drop significantly after that by losing 63-10. But here's the thing. I have been dropping them slowly, week by week in my rankings. And that's really because low-key to me, I was never impressed by their trench play, even against the cupcake teams that they faced. And then Duke especially really exposed their trench play on both sides of the ball. Duke was able to run the ball pretty well against Illinois. And I thought they low-key exposed Illinois' defensive line run defense in that game. They're able to run a lot and pretty much bully Illinois' defensive line in that game. But because Duke's offense is very one-dimensional, they're not really good at passing, they weren't really able to make Illinois pay for that. It's hard, even if you have an advantage in the run game. If you're one-dimensional in the run game, you can't really consistently put up a lot of long drives and a lot of points that way. It's harder. So, and Illinois has a pretty decent secondary, even though they got really exposed in this Indiana game. A lot of that has to do with the fact that Illinois was not able to get pressure on Indiana's Mendoza. And so looking at this game, their defense and offensive line this time not only got exposed, but it got exposed with consequences. Indiana's Mendoza, as I said, had all the time in the world to throw the ball. And what was really surprising to me was how open the receivers were on every play. And I'm going to get into a lot more detail on how I'm impressed by Indiana much later. But I'm just kind of surprised because Illinois secondary is pretty good. I mean, they've looked pretty good and they're known to be pretty good. But I think a lot of it had to do with injuries. From what I understand, there's a lot of injuries in the secondary, but still, it's no excuse. They just got destroyed by a much far superior team, but mainly is because their trench play is very weak. And I think Luke Altmaier is probably the best QB in the league. But it doesn't matter if he has zero time to throw and he cannot see anything other than defensive linemen in his face. Play after play after play after play. So this team got really wrecked, really exposed. They're still a really well-coached team. I think they have a good secondary. They're good at making adjustments. They have a really good passing offense. Marginally good skill players. I think when they're healthy, they're still a decent team, but they're not anywhere near the 4th, the 5th, or the 6th best team, certainly in the league. I think they're at best a 7th best team, but for right now, after this ass whooping, they look like the 9th best team. Perhaps once they get healthy again, they might move up a little bit. So next on the list, I have the Iowa Hawkeyes at number 8. I've had them at number 8 each of my ranking videos, each of these weeks that I've done. And I really just don't see any reason to move them anywhere. This week they survived Rutgers, and they did it in Iowa fashion, where they won 2 out of 3 phases in the game. They also won the turnover battle, but they won the defensive phase of the game, and they won the special teams phase of the game. And that's really Iowa's mission statement. Frankly, that's their mission statement. win the defensive phase in the game and win the special teams phase in the game, and we'll win 7 or 8 or 9 games every season. And that's their model, and that's why I think Kirk Ferentz is kind of a fraud. He's a good coach. He's not a Hall of Fame coach for this reason. Because he's done just enough. He's not to get fired. He's like one of these people that's good enough not to get fired and stay with the company, with the program for a long time, but never accomplish anything of any significance. He doesn't have any trophies in his trophy room. You go to whatever they call the hall at Kinnick Stadium. You walk down the hall in Kinnick Stadium, there's no trophies. At least not since Hayden Fry was there. So, again, there's not much to analyze with Iowa. They're going to be... You even look at their Iowa State game. It played out the same way. A one-possession game, and, it seems like it goes back and forth. They win about 50% of the time since Matt Campbell's been there. The only thing that's different is their offense is slightly better and their defense is slightly worse, and it kind of balances out. And it's interesting that they kind of missed that window in 2021 through 2023 where they had this incredible defense, elite, world-beating defense that is easily they were top 3 probably 3 years in a row. And you could probably maybe even argue that the 2023 defense could have been like the best defense in the league that year. But they had Nepo Baby, who Kirk Ferentz couldn't fire. And if they would have had just a margin, like not even good, maybe just a top 80 offense, they could have been a college football playoff contender. Who knows? So that window was missed. And they're just, right now, just kind of Iowa-ing along. And they're probably going to have about 7 or 8 wins this season again, maybe 9. So next up on the list, at number 7, I have the Washington Huskies. I have moved them up from my last ranking from number 9 to number 7. And I didn't really know how to rank them because of their opponents, but now that we've seen other teams like Illinois really struggle on offense against good defenses where their offensive line, their offense cannot overcome a good defense because of their offensive line, I do not see any issue with Washington's offense whatsoever. They can run the ball. They're incredibly explosive. Their offense is really good to where any deficiencies that they have on defense, their offense is so good that it can overcome a lot of that against a lot of teams. Of course, not the best teams in the league, I don't believe. It's their offense is probably easily one of the top 3 offenses in the league. If you were to pick them, I would put them with Oregon, Indiana. And if you were to pick any one of those, I wouldn't really disagree with you. I think they're all incredible, all 3 of them. And I don't think there's any offense right now that's actually that close to them. Now, of course, their issue a little bit is their defense. They gave up 21 to Colorado State, which is probably a little bit more than you would like. UC Davis probably shouldn't be giving up 10 to an FCS opponent. And Washington State, they gave up 24, and I don't think Washington State's probably a really good team. They gave up 24 to them. This game was actually close in the third quarter as Washington State kind of closed the gap and made it a 24-17 game until Washington just rattled off 35 points to make this a total routing. But I'm really, really just impressed with everything about their offense. It's incredibly explosive. They can run the ball. Their quarterback is really... His ability their quarterback is really impressive. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in the Big Ten. It's really hard to rank them, but I would say their quarterback is probably one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks easily in the league. His ability to run, his mobility, the explosive passing game, Everything about the offense is fun to watch, impressive, and incredibly explosive. So right now I have Washington at number 7 because I'm just so enamored and impressed by their offense. So now, as I'm excited to talk about, is my Michigan Wolverines. Of course, as a Michigan fan, I'm excited and relieved by the win. But anytime there's a W in a high stakes game like this, that has a lot of indication for their season, how their season could go, and it's a must win game. It feels very good. I'm not going to lie. However, it was one of the most irritating games I've seen in some time because they should have easily won by 2 or 3 possessions. You take the Hail Mary. You take all these. I don't know if they're. I'd have to watch. I'd have to rewatch the game to get a better idea, or look at some video analysis. But either the secondary was having breakdowns on these third and longs, or Wink Martindale just horrible schemes on those third and longs. And there are many third and longs. That giving up 21 yards on that 3rd and 22 in the last drive Nebraska had was just. That was ridiculous. So there's a lot to clean up in this game, I think. And the Hail Mary, too. The Hail Mary was ridiculous. There's no reason that should have happened. There was one Nebraska player in a sea of Michigan players standing in the end zone, in between them, gets up and catches the ball uncontested. That just should never happen. When that happened, that gave me flashbacks to '94 for a minute with the Cordell Stewart in Colorado. This ended up being less consequential because they won, but it was really worse in the way it was executed, defensively especially. Going to things to look at, there's a lot of positive things, though. I think the running game, granted Nebraska, as I said in the Nebraska segment, is really weak in the trenches. Michigan took advantage of it. It looks like they're improving on the offensive line. The way they're blocking and getting pushed and getting to the second level with the linebackers, and everybody's moving. Whenever they pull, the linemen are moving really well in sync. I'm not an offensive line guru, but just as a layman looking at the offensive line, it just looked really good this game. And it looks like they've probably come quite a few, maybe a bit of a ways from that Oklahoma game where they were. I was really impressed with that. And their defensive line getting into the backfield was really impressive. Their tackling, their open field tackling was really good. And they had some missed tackles in the backfield, which was kind of annoying. So I would say missed tackles in the backfield, secondary breakdowns on 3rd and long, and receivers not playing really well. I think McCulley really shined in this game, and that's really encouraging because they're going to need McCulley later in the season, against teams like USC, against Ohio State, probably Michigan State too. They're going to need McCulley to step up. They're going to need Hansen and Klein to really step up. To have, 3 reliable receivers and then have Channing Goodwin and Samaj Morgan and like Marsh improve as the season goes on, I think is important. But this is a really good defining win against a solid mid-tier team in the Big Ten. On the road, really difficult environment. A game where they had resolve and they came up with the win. A tough win against a decent team on the road. And this is a good step, I think, for the growth of their season. And it really makes their season, everything's on the table right now. And I think they're in a really good position. I think the running of Bryce Underwood, the use of Bryce Underwood, I think is used really well, very selectively well. His numbers are only 12 of 22 for 105, but I think if you were to not take away that catch from McCulley, or he was in bounds, his foot was in bounds, and Channing Goodwin had caught that ball in the end zone, you would be looking at 14 of 22 with close to 200 yards against a really, really good secondary, I think. Probably the best, maybe, I don't know like how they compare it to Nebraska's secondary compares to Oklahoma, but they're holding teams to under 100 going into this game. So I think Bryce Underwood is definitely improving, looking good, and like where the team is right now. All right, at number 5, I have the USC Trojans, and they were at home again in the Coliseum against Michigan State this past Saturday, and they won 45-31. Although I think the score was not indicative of how much they dominated this game. It was really more of a blowout. But their secondary got a little bit exposed. And looking back, I was going back and forth between where to rank USC and Michigan. And I went back and forth quite a few times because a lot of these teams are very, very close to each other, I think. Not necessarily in style of football, but just close to each other, and the amount of positives they have versus the amount of negatives that they have. I think Michigan has a better offensive line than USC. USC and Michigan's offensive lines are pretty comparable. Secondary wise, they're very comparable, I think, because both teams this past weekend got exposed in the secondary a bit, and Michigan's been exposed twice, and I think it's more like teams are just having communication issues in the secondary because there's just some big pass plays where it just looked like there was a breakdown in the secondary in this game against Michigan State, where there was just wide open receivers down the field, where they had these big gash plays, long pass plays for touchdowns. Michigan State does have an explosive offense passing wise. They're not a very good team all around. They have a lot of deficiencies on their team and issues, but I think their wide receiver room definitely have some bodies, and Nick Marsh is definitely a Sunday player, I think, and Aiden Childs can be a dangerous quarterback if he has time to throw. He can be a dangerous quarterback, although inconsistent, but he in spurts can generate explosive plays down the field, and he's dangerous with his legs at times. So he can be at times a handful, and that can explain, combined with UFC's a few of their defensive breakdowns, how they ended up giving up 31 points. But one thing that USC has an advantage, I think, over Michigan is they have a more balanced offense. They have a much more complete offense. Their running game is very impressive. They ran for 289 yards versus Michigan State, and they also passed for 234 yards. And I think their quarterback, I don't know where to put him. I wouldn't know where to rank him in the Big Ten, but he's definitely one of the better Big Ten players. It's very hard to rank Big Ten quarterbacks because it seems like there's a lot of them. It seems like there's about 7 of them that are really good. That are kind of like all kind of there together, kind of in the same tier. And I'm not going to pronounce this guy's name. His first name's Jaden. But he went 20 for 26 for 234 yards, which is very good, very, very good performance. And if you look overall, real balanced attack. They had 523 total yards. Even with even with those big gash plays and 31 points that were scored on them by Michigan State, they still held Michigan State to a respective number, 337 yards, and they outgained them by almost 200 yards. So I think this is one of the elite offenses in the league. I think they're definitely one of the probably top 4, top 5, easily top 4, top 5 offenses in the Big Ten, maybe even top 3. They have a good defensive coordinator, but we shall see what happens when they play Michigan, because that will be a big showdown, and that's when we'll find some things out about where these teams lie. And that will be an incredible matchup. And of course, USC is going to be at home, so they definitely have that home field advantage going for them in this game. We'll see how they hold up against Michigan's defensive line in this game, and we'll see if they can stop Michigan's run. That's really what I'm looking at, is really USC's offense versus Michigan's defensive line. That's a big matchup, and USC versus Michigan's offensive line versus USC's defensive line, because I think Michigan probably will have an advantage there against USC's defensive line, I think. But USC will definitely have a better advantage with their passing offense against Michigan's passing defense, I think, than Michigan's passing offense will have against USC's passing defense. It's a tough matchup to predict, definitely, and that will be a big game. That'll be a really big, consequential game. So now we have the Indiana Hoosiers. And I was really, really, really almost there to where I wanted to put them at the top of the list. But I really couldn't pull the trigger. And the reason why, the only reason is I don't have evidence of them being successful against the big dogs. The very top tier teams like Ohio State and teams like Penn State, Oregon. But they do play Oregon. So that will be a real judgment day kind of game. But, you look at their games against Notre Dame last year. That was kind of like the first. And you look at Ohio State and Notre Dame. They really got beat up because those teams just had superior, more talented players and full of blue chip players on their roster. So really, until I have evidence that they can hold up against those teams that have blue chip talent on the roster, I am not going to pull the trigger and put them at number one. But I do believe they're in the top tier list of the Big Ten. They're in the top tier. They're with that group right now. And I think it'll be interesting with Oregon because Oregon kind of got exposed on their defensive line with their run defense against Northwestern. So it'll be interesting if Indiana can get any leverage, can get any push and get a good running game going against that Oregon defensive line and to open up the passing game. We'll see. That's the only thing that's holding me back. But looking at them, their trench play looks incredible. That Mario Landino on the defensive line looks low-key, almost like a Mason Graham from Michigan, almost. They were getting pressure from the interior, not just the edge, but they were getting pressure from the interior consistently onto Luke Altmaier. And a lot of that's because Illinois' offensive line actually is below average. So keeping that in mind, that's something to keep in mind. That's the only, again, I do not really have a really good barometer of how good their defensive line and offensive line is. But still, looking at the eye test, you could tell that they're for real to a certain level. Now, taking that into account, I've never seen such a thorough ass whipping on a ranked team in the Big Ten, in Big Ten play. I can't, in recent memory, it's hard for me to remember. This is everything. I've never seen such a thorough, methodical beatdown of a ranked opponent like this. And Illinois is not a bad team. They really aren't. I mean, they have issues in the trenches, but the way they carved up a formidable defensive secondary that has injuries but still formidable was quite unusual. And it was just every play, every drive they were scoring. Every drive they were scoring effortlessly. They were throwing the ball effortlessly. Mendoza had all the time in the world. He was making perfect reads. Everything was so methodical and efficient. This team looked. They didn't look human. They looked like a computer program. Coming up with the best schemes based on what the defense is doing on the spot and calculating the best throw to make based on the formations that in defensive formation that Illinois was doing. I was blown away, and I'm kind of left speechless by this game. I really believe that Curt Cignetti is the best coach in college football. He is the best coach in college football. He's taken the worst program in the history of the Big Ten, and they might be the worst program in the Power Five. It's between them and Kansas, I think. He's taking them, and he took them to the playoffs last year, And he's taking them and potentially making them a top tier Big Ten program and possibly, who knows, dare I say, a national championship contender? Let's not forget, he came from Nick Saban, and this looks a lot like those early 2010 Alabama teams that are just methodical, efficient, really physical. They do everything right. Every play is like a game in itself. I'm just not sure that they have the horses up front. But who knows? Kirk Cignetti, like his specialty when he was at Alabama under Nick Saban was his ability to evaluate players. He has a knack for seeing things that probably other coaches don't in evaluating players. So players that may not have been 5 stars or high 4 stars and coming out of high school, he can recognize productivity in players in the transfer portal really well. I think it's a matter of time once he has some recruiting classes where he can get some bigger talent, more blue chip talent. It's a matter of time. It'll only be a matter of time where they could become like an old school Saban era Alabama team, possibly. But this Oregon game coming up very soon will be a judgment day for both teams and where these teams stand in the Big Ten, and I'm looking forward to it. Okay, at number 3, I have the Penn State Nittany Lions. I think this is the best trench team in the Big Ten. I think they have the best offensive line, and combine their offensive and defensive line together, they have the best. They have the best trench play, I believe, in the Big Ten. The issue I have with Penn State, though, is really their passing game, which is Drew Allar. I think Drew Allar is overrated. I never really quite fully understood the hype that this kid keeps getting. He was getting a lot of hype before 2022, and he wasn't really that impressive to me in 2022. That was his first year as a starter. 2023. His first year was 2023. 2024, last year he didn't really impress me that much either. He had Warren, his tight end, really as just a safety blanket. A passing game to wide receivers was pretty much non-existent last season, and that was their missing piece. And with everybody that they got in the transfer portal at wide receiver, I believe they got 3 of them as reinforcements to really add this last missing piece to their offense and to their team, frankly, that could potentially take them, kind of over the hump and through the wall to get to that elite status where they're beating teams like Ohio State, beating teams like Oregon, winning the Big Ten, and potentially getting to the national championship, at least getting there and taking that next step as a program. But I got to say, I'm just not seeing the hype in Drew Allar. Like, I'm just not impressed by him. Or it's not necessarily by him, but at least the passing offense. Because receivers are not getting great separation against cupcake teams, and he's not making tight window throws very well and very often or very consistently. So what I'm seeing from him, I just don't get. I don't think he's the best quarterback. I don't think he's the second best quarterback. I don't think he's the third. I don't even necessarily think he's the 4th or 5th best quarterback. I could, off the top of my head, I think Mendoza from Indiana, Luke Altmaier. I think Washington's quarterback Williams. And I think I'll even say Dante Moore are potentially better. USC's quarterback possibly. So I really do not see this kid as being like this great elite savior quarterback right now. He's got some mobility. He's got escapability. You might have to spy him. But things open up, for the passing game because of the running game. Often there's that. But if this team is not dominating Ohio State at the line of scrimmage and just running the ball for like 200 yards, same goes against Oregon. I just don't see this. I don't see this them being that team that everybody is projecting them to be. So that's why I have them here at number 3. Okay, so at number 2, I have the Oregon Ducks. I dropped them from number 1. The reason being is I believe their D line got exposed a little bit against Northwestern last week. I didn't do a week 3 video. So I'm kind of retroactively looking back at week 3 to kind of assess where they are right now also for this video. And I think Northwestern was really physical in that game, and I think I don't want to say they really bullied them, but they really had an advantage. It was a little bit more than a stalemate. They had an advantage up front with their Northwestern's offensive line versus Oregon's defensive line in the run game. Pass game, that's a different story. Oregon has an elite pass rush, probably the best in the Big Ten, and you could probably possibly make an argument for maybe the best pass rush in the country. It's possible. But their run game is not elite. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a liability, but it could be a liability against teams like when they face Penn State. And that could be a real issue going into that game. Could be an issue against Indiana. Like I said about Indiana, they haven't been really tested yet against an elite Big Ten team that has more size up front. But we'll see how they hold up against Indiana. We'll see how they hold up against Penn State to see if it will become a liability in those games. But really, that's their one thing that's kind of keeping them from being number 1. Because I think Dante Moore is better than Sayin for Ohio State. I think he's probably better than Drew Aller. He's improving each game. He's able to throw a lot of balls into tight windows is something I noticed. He can make a lot of different throws. He can throw the ball deep. He can make layered throws. He's improving as the season goes on, definitely. And looking more like he's approaching being an elite quarterback. Everything's still on the table for Oregon. I think they're definitely a contender for the Big Ten title. Definitely. They're definitely a team that I would put up there as having a great chance of winning the Big Ten title. And they're definitely more than a college football playoff contender. They have the schemes, they have the coaching, they have the talent, they have the wide receivers, they have a quarterback, they have the offensive line, they have overall a pretty good defense. But we'll see where they are after the Indiana game and the Penn State game. Okay, so rounding it up at number 1 in our power rankings for week 4 is the Ohio State Buckeyes, and they're really there by default. They had a bye week. It's just looking at Oregon and looking at Penn State, who also had a bye week. Just looking at these teams, Ohio State is a more complete team, I think, than those teams. Just a little bit more complete. And just starting off looking at Oregon, as I said, they have an issue potentially in their run defense, which got a little bit exposed, I think, by Northwestern. Penn State, as I mentioned, is really not. I just don't think their passing offense is really that good right now. It's kind of mediocre. Ohio State really doesn't have any deficiencies. They have Julian Sayin, who is a marginally good quarterback, but with that offensive system and Ryan Day's schemes And the continuity he's had with that offense and that system and the amount of weapons that come and go in that system, any quarterback that's marginally good that's thrown into that system is going to be successful. And he has, just like any other Ohio State quarterback under Ryan Day, has plethora of weapons and a good offensive line to go with it, to where it's very easy. It's much easier for him to operate in than the offense that Drew Aller has. From a passing game perspective, looking at their defense is elite, probably the best in the Big Ten. Well, it's between them, I think, and Penn State as having the best defenses in the Big Ten. I think their secondary is probably the best in the Big Ten. I would say their run defense is, on the defensive side, is their one thing that is not elite. I wouldn't say it's a liability or it's necessarily been really exposed. I would argue that Texas did a good job against running against that Ohio State defense. But compared to Oregon's run defense, it would appear that I would put Ohio State's. I'm much less concerned about Ohio State's run defense than I am Oregon's. And I just think Ohio State right now is the best all-around team, and that's why I have them at number one. So thank you if you made it this far. If you want to like, share, and subscribe, please go right ahead. Feel obliged, because I plan on continuing to make videos like this every week, but I don't plan on only making top 10 videos or ranking videos for sports or college football. I have a plethora of different mediums that I want to tackle, like movies, ranking cinema, music, travel, all kinds of things. It's an ultimate rankings channel.